This is a comparison a lot of you have been waiting for.
And it's one that we have just been dying to do. It's the battle of the mid-size SUVs.
Our lineup for today includes models in their high-performance turbo petrol and automatic avatars. With us today are the MG Astor,
The Volkswagen Taigun,
the Skoda Kushaq,
the Hyundai Creta,
the Kia Seltos,
and the Nissan Kicks.
Now, as you can imagine, we have a lot to talk about.
And we don't have a lot of time to waste, so let's get right into it.
.2 to 4.4 meter long SUVs have been in huge demand for a while now, and there's lots of reasons why. Aside from typical SUV draws of high ground clearance, an elevated seating position, and of course street cred, these mid-size SUVs also seem right-sized for India. They portray that much-wanted big car image, yet don't feel unwieldy on our congested roads like the larger models from the SUV universe. For car makers, the mid-size SUV segment is the segment to crack. Which is telling in our lineup because of the 6 models with us, 3 were launched over just the past 12 months.
To give a brief of the contenders, the MG Astor is the newest and is relying on comfort and tech to wow buyers. The Volkswagen Taigun and the Skoda Kushaq are the VW Group's new entries in the segment, and the promise is of European engineering at wallet-friendly prices. Hyundai's original Creta ruled the segment since its launch in 2015, and this second-gen model that's been on sale since 2020 builds on that very successful formula. The Creta's cousin from Kia, the hugely successful Seltos, offers a different flavor with the same ingredients. And last but not least, we have the Nissan Kicks. That's the oldest model here if you go by launch chronology, though it has got a new lease of life with new engines and gearboxes for the BS6 era. While we'll give you our definitive pick over the course of this video, tell us which is your favorite of the segment down in the comments below. And if you want more such mega comparos, do give this video a thumbs up and remember to subscribe to Autocar India.
Now, while only the Creta and Seltos can also be had with diesel power, each of these models are offered with 2 petrol engine options. And as mentioned, it's their more powerful turbo petrol automatic variants that are in consideration in this comparison. The MG Astor is the odd one out, being the only one to feature a 3-cylinder engine, and it's also the only one with a torque converter gearbox. The Volkswagen Taigun and Skoda Kushaq share their 4-cylinder 1.5-litre turbo petrol engines and 7-speed DSG dual-clutch transmissions. And it's a similar story with the Hyundai Creta and Kia Seltos that use the same hardware of a 1.4 turbo petrol engine and 7-speed dual-clutch transmissions. The Nissan Kicks is the only one with a CVT, while its 1330cc turbo petrol unit is the smallest engine if you go strictly by displacement.
The Kicks does have bragging rights with the most power at 156 horsepower. The Astor trails the others with its 220 Nm torque figure, but matches the Seltos and Creta with 140 horsepower. All models channel their power to the front wheels only and are similar in their suspension setups too, with McPherson struts up front and a non-independent twist beam arrangement at the back. It's the Kicks with the most ground clearance at 210mm. Front disc brakes are standard fit on all, though only the Astor, Creta and Seltos get discs at the back too. That's that for the on-paper comparison. What's each SUV like to drive? First up, the MG Astor. So here we are, the car that has brought all these cars together today, the MG Astor, and well, there's a lot to unpack, frankly, but why don't we start with the engine?
Now, on paper, you might think that this has the makings of an exciting car, but in reality, it's probably the most chilled out and most laid back of the 6 SUVs we have with us today. It doesn't, really try too hard to excite you. It's for easy-going driving. It feels quite relaxed. You can drive it a bit harder, but it doesn't rev as quick as the others. It doesn't rev as hard as the others. The gearbox is also good, but not lightning quick.
Exactly. I feel like the performance is all there, but it's just in no hurry to give it to you.
Yeah. And that feeling was reflected in our V-Box timings too, where the Astor delivered reasonable performance but not near best in class. It is pleasant in town and in average driving scenarios. But what you will like this car for is its refinement. It's got the quietest engine. I think noise insulation is the best, except on coast surfaces you can hear more tire noise than the other cars. The 3-cylinder engine does sound thrummy when you rev it hard, but it's not a car you'd want to rev hard anyway.
And I think in keeping with that relaxed corseting ideology, they've also gone for quite a soft suspension, right?
Yeah, so this has the softest suspension, and the advantage of that is in low speed environments, city driving, it's got the best low speed ride. But that softness comes at the cost of high speed manners. You will feel it right now.
Okay, there we go. Okay.
It's set up very soft, as we've already covered, and you can feel that softness at high speeds. There's a lot of weight transfer, and let me just put it this way, where the Taigun and Kushaq egg you to drive harder, the Astor tells you to take it easy.
And again, what I remember is that the steering isn't too much to write home about, but you can fiddle with it a bit.
So there's urban, which is light, and it's really light. Good in city driving, but you don't want that much lightness when you're going faster. Normal gets the job done. Dynamic adds more weight, but it still feels very artificial.
It's not the model for keen drivers then, but it does have something that the others don't. Now, of course, one thing that sets this car apart from the rest, and it's a big one, ADAS features.
So I'll go one by one. Lane departure warning, really good. Lane keep assist, I'm not too comfortable driving with a loose hand on the steering wheel. What really works well is the blind spot assist, especially in Mumbai's crazy traffic. Of the other things, forward collision warning, autonomous emergency braking, brilliant features, especially in our distracted times.
My favorite is adaptive cruise control, where you set the speed and it matches the car in front of you and holds that distance. It's so handy on the highway on long drives, because when I go out on the highway, I feel like that's the one thing I tend to play around with most with cars that do have it, and here in the mid-size SUV segment, wow.
If the Astor is all about taking it easy, the Taigun is all about driver excitement, and it starts with the engine.
They've gone all out with this one. It's a new engine, it's a high-tech engine. I mean, it's got stuff like cylinder deactivation, which by the way works super seamlessly to help you save some fuel if you want. But if you don't want to, you can have a lot of fun with this engine.
So, what I noticed on the Taigun was that it starts off a bit slow, and then I think it gets a second wind in the mid-range, but you have the most fun in the very top end of the power band.
TSI Tech, man, they've come a long way and they are still the best in the game as far as pure engine making goes, I think.
Yeah.
You know where else they're the best in the game? DSG gearboxes. These guys were the pioneers and they have just about perfected it now, I think. First of all, there's very little, not say it's gone entirely, but very little of that hesitation that you sometimes used to get with DSG gearboxes. That's pretty much taken care of. And when you're going for it, oh man. And yeah, of course, there are paddle shifts if you want to take control yourself. The quick gearbox and lenient electronics allow the engine to rev to 6,500 RPM. The Taigun not only feels it, but is the fastest of the mid-sized SUVs, with a 0 to 100 kph time of 8.89 seconds. And it's the quickest in kickdown acceleration too, with times better than the Kushaq that uses the same engine and gearbox.
So it's got the engine, but does it have the handling?
Oh yes, it does. It's honestly, when you're going at low speeds, you might be thinking that, okay, this is a bit light in the steering for a German car. And you're right, but that does make it very maneuverable in town. But the good news is that it weights up really nicely as you go into corners, like on this little stretch here. And it's just so pointy at the front end. It's an absolute joy to tuck into corners. And the chassis just follows through. The body control is really tight. And you want to push this car harder and harder. Between the engine and the way this car is set up in the chassis, oof, it's just an absolute joy.
So it's heavily localized, but they've still managed to retain that Europeanness in the ride, right?
That's absolutely true, and that means, yeah, a slightly firm edge, sure, but as you start to pick up the pace, as you go faster and faster, the ride just gets better and better at absorbing bumps.
It's not all perfect though. You can hear creaks from the beading on bad patches, and the VW engine is the most audible on the go too, though that's probably more to do with the sound deadening than the engine itself.
Time to swap seats and swap cars. And now for a little bit of sibling rivalry. It's the Skoda Kushaq, and let's be honest, is it exactly the same?
Pretty much, and that's not a bad thing because this is a fun car, man. The engine, the steering, just the way it corners, I love the bite that it has at the front wheels. Honestly, if you enjoy driving, it's down to probably the Taigun and Kushaq.
I absolutely agree. I told you you'd have fun in the next car you drove.
Yeah, it's just so responsive. The gearbox is responsive. It turns very tightly. It drives like something smaller, and that's in a good way.
Correct.
Like the Taigun, the Kushaq feels energetic, the engine is happy to rev, and the DSG gearbox is really slick and quick.
VW and Skoda haven't said if and what the differences are between the two, but our V-Box did find the Taigun to be marginally faster. Be in no doubt though, because the Kushaq is quick, second only to the Taigun across flat-out acceleration and kick-down acceleration. As on the Taigun, paddle shifters add to the excitement quotient. And by the feel of it, this suspension is also kind of the same, right?
Yeah, I think there's no difference, at least in the suspension setups. So the typical European firmness is very much there on the very Indian Skoda Kushaq. But what that slight low-speed firmness does bring is high-speed stability and agility. Again, like the Taigun, the Kushaq will change character when you want to dial things down. And when you're nearing the end of the month and you need to save some fuel, you'll be happy to know that your Kushaq's 1.5 TSI Evo engine has cylinder on demand tech, which shuts off 2 cylinders when you're easy cruising. Helps to save fuel.
Sadly, the Kushaq isn't free from creaks on the bad patches, and sound deadening on the move isn't the best. Next up is the Creta, and it makes a strong first impression.
The first point of note, now we are driving this after the Taigun, the Kushaq and the Astor. The first thing is that it feels larger than them, and you're sat a bit higher, and because the pillars are more upright, it feels more SUV, if you get what I mean, from behind the wheel, and that's a good feeling, I think. Okay, now about the engine. What I like about it is its flexibility. When you're starting out low revs to middle revs, it's a very nice delivery of power. It's a very likable engine, and you can always dial things up with sport mode, and that actually makes the Creta more exciting. Sure, the Creta doesn't have the top-end spice of the Taigun and Kushaq's engines, nor is its gearbox quite as fast as their DSG unit. But for most buyers, the Creta Turbo will be quick enough. Those drive modes help fine-tune the experience, and the Creta's 9.81 second 0 to 100 kph time achieved in sport mode is impressive. Paddle shifters add an additional layer of driver engagement too.
Okay, so there's definitely an improvement, but I still wouldn't call it the fun to drive car of this bunch, right?
No, it isn't. Let's talk about handling. It's very neat and tidy, but it's not a car that, you'd buy for the way it handles. Let's put it that way. The Creta steering is easy to twirl, and it's good on low-speed ride as well. It's maybe not as plush as the Astor, but it comes in second, at least in that respect. And the cool thing is that even when you are at higher speeds, if you notice, if the last generation Creta was your benchmark, you're not moving around all that much, right?
Correct. It's far more controlled this time around.
But at the same time, when you go faster and the road sort of deteriorates, it sort of moves around a bit. It's not as confident as the Kicks or the VW or Skoda.
It's time once again to swap driving duties, and now it's into the Kia Seltos. And after a go in the Creta, the sensation in the Seltos is best described as same but different. Man, for all the things that these two cars share, this and the Creta, the similarities are subtle, but they're there, you know. And you gotta remember that when this car came out, apart from all the gizmos and stuff like that, it really set a few other benchmarks. Like, this was the first turbo petrol engine in the segment, and well, that's the reason we have all the cars with us we do today. They're all turbo petrols.
Pretty sophisticated hardware, dual clutch transmission again. It was the first in the segment with that.
And well, it's a very handy thing to have a dual clutch transmission, because this car is generally quite a fun thing to drive.
Yeah, and there are certain differences in the way the Creta and the Seltos produce power, right?
Again, yeah, for the hardware being as identical really under the skin as it is, this car too has the exact same drive modes, eco, normal and sport. And in sport, if you're really going for it, it does feel just that little bit more aggressive, that little bit more responsive than the Creta. The Seltos is ever so slightly faster than the Creta from a standstill, with a 0 to 100 kph time of 9.72 seconds. Surprisingly, while the Seltos feels more aggressive in kickdown and acceleration, it's actually slower than the Creta, with the differences likely down to the gearbox calibration. Notably, last year's update also brought in paddle shifters.
In everyday driving, just like the Creta, the Seltos is smooth, quiet and responsive, but there are differences in their suspension setups. The Seltos is also set up slightly differently.
Very slightly. It's marginal, but again, it's noticeable. If you're going to have one of these cars to live with every day, you've got to keep it in mind. It's a little bit on the firmer side. And again, that bodes well for the handling. We'll see very shortly. But as you'll notice in a second, I think the ride is just a little bit firmer.
Yeah, and you can feel more of the road in the Seltos.
Oh, absolutely. But like I said, it's subtle. And much like you said, we can't discount the Creta for being not the best handler. You can't discount the Seltos for being not the best riding car. It's not that bad. Mind you, our Seltos GTX Plus test car runs on 17-inch rims. The new Seltos X-Line trim that rides on larger 18-inch rims would be stiffer still. The firmer setup does have its benefits though.
So, same corner a few minutes after the Creta.
See, that slightly stiffer suspension, it's really not much when you're going in a straight line, but put it into a corner in sport mode, going hard, and it makes a difference. It makes that slight difference, and if you're keen on driving, you'll really appreciate it.
Yeah. And there's another thing that sets the Seltos apart. Isn't that a damn good feature?
Lane watch camera, right? The simplest thing when you have 360-degree cameras anyway, but so effective.
It's into the Kicks, and of course the very first question is about performance. It's the most powerful of the SUVs here. Does it feel so?
Well, it's very, very peppy off the line. The moment you put your foot down, it just leaps forward, and that's quite an exciting feeling. But I think a lot of that has to do with this gearbox, which is a CVT. Now, you might want to mark it down for being the only CVT of this bunch amongst, DCTs and torque converters, but actually this is one of the best CVTs out there. It's very responsive off the line, and it gets through its duties without really interrupting you and without too much of that rubber band effect that we like to talk about. It's very, very smooth and very good. And although it doesn't have paddle shifters, it does actually have a manual mode, so you can simulate shifts through the gear lever.
And it's quite good in manual mode. Right?
It is quite good in manual mode. It can be quite enjoyable actually. For all its power, the Kicks is not the fastest of the six. Performance is appreciable for the most part, but if it's that exciting rush of power you're looking for, the Kicks CVT isn't for you. It's not one to goad you on to go faster. It's thrilling for a moment, and then it settles down. But the thrust is always there, I think.
The Kicks does stand out though, and for good reason. Yeah, I think it's possibly the most SUV-like, if, a tough build and, that freedom to go fast over bad patches of road is your definition of an SUV.
Speaking of which, here we go. Absolutely sailing over this at whatever speed I want, and it doesn't shake you around too much, right? Yeah. This thing, especially the faster you go, will absolutely soak it all up. The Kicks also corners nice and flat, but the relatively old school hydraulic assisted steering does hamper the experience. It does feel nice and weighty, which is kind of what you want, but then when you're just ambling around at low speeds in traffic, you want it to be light and easy, and it just isn't. Yeah. And also, if you hit a bump at speed or something like that, it really shocks you in your hands. You get a lot of that steering shock from the wheels through the steering wheel, and that's just not that pleasant an experience. The firm low speed ride also takes away from the experience in the Kicks. Now, over our drives, we've talked acceleration numbers, and it's only fitting that we lead into the safety section with a word on braking performance. While all the SUVs stop well, it was, ironically, the models without rear disc brakes, namely the Taigun, Kushaq and Kicks, that stopped in the shortest distance from 80 kph.
In terms of safety kit, all models featured here get ABS, ESC, Hill Start Assist and child seat mounts. The Astor, Taigun, Kushaq, Creta and Seltos get 6 airbags in fully loaded form, while the Kicks Turbo CVT that's only sold in mid-spec trim makes do with just 2. The Seltos is the only one with front parking sensors and also features a very handy lane watch camera. In active safety features though, it's the Astor that packs in a whole lot more with its ADAS functions, and the MG is also the only one with hill descent control. All models comply with latest Indian crash test norms, but only the Seltos has been crash tested by Global NCAP that rated it a middle-of-the-road 3 stars on adult occupant protection.
Now, you've already seen these models on the move over the past few minutes, so we'll keep the bit on size and styling brief. It's the Nissan Kicks that's the longest, widest and tallest of the models here, though the MG Astor comes in a close second on size. But where the Kicks has the longest wheelbase in the segment, the Astor's is the shortest. The Creta and Seltos are mid-sized within this mid-size segment, while the Taigun and Kushaq have the smallest footprint. The VW and Skoda's 2651mm wheelbase is second only to the Kicks' though.
The MG Astor is well turned out and looks premium, though it's more swoopy crossover than upright SUV in shape. The last bit is true for the Nissan Kicks as well. It has the most distinctive shape, and that relatively high ground clearance also establishes it as the most outdoorsy of the 6. The Volkswagen Taigun and Skoda Kushaq do appear relatively small in this company, but they're unmistakably European in look. Of the two, it's the Taigun that has more flash with a lot more chrome and that distinctive light bar at the back. The clean-cut Kushaq comes across as the more understated of the cousins. The Creta and Seltos are not the largest on paper, but they do look the most substantial. The second-gen Creta is a sales hit, yes, but that split headlamp and split tail lamp arrangement divides opinion even 2 years after launch. The Kia Seltos isn't as dramatic in look, and many will like it for that.
Having also spent lots of time behind the wheel, here's what we thought of their interiors. The MG Astor immediately wows you for quality, with generous use of soft touch and padded materials on the dashboard. And that sangria red cabin theme actually looks swell. The MG's dash is neat, the 7-inch LCD cluster at the dials has stylish graphics, and those up front will be comfy on the softly cushioned seats.
The Taigun experience starts with a reassuring sound on door shut, and you'll like much of what you see inside. The dashboard is new age VW, there's ambient lighting that adds a sense of occasion, and though not full width, the digital instrument screen with its 3 themes looks nice. Cabin quality is good, though you won't find any soft touch materials inside. That being said, that German attention to detail is missed, and even the basic roof lining is very un-VW. Broader framed occupants might find the front seat snug at the sides, but shoulder and thigh support is excellent.
You'll find a lot of similar elements in the Kushaq, though the unique dashboard top does give the Skoda interior a different, more business-like vibe. The chrome detailing and dimpled effect on the dash looks stylish, and the 2-spoke steering with its chromed roller switches feels rich. However, all's not perfect. The MID screen between the analog instruments looks like it belongs on an older car, and again, the roof lining tells you where Skoda has cut costs. Elsewhere, you'll get the same tough build, the plastics have a long-lasting look to them, and even the large front seats are really supportive at the shoulders and legs, but aren't quite generous with width.
As mentioned, the Creta's cabin feels airier than most rivals. You're also sat relatively higher up on the well-cushioned front seats, and because the dash cowl is low, you get a really good view out. The dashboard doesn't break new ground for design, but is user-friendly. Cabin quality isn't best, with many hard and shiny plastics that particularly stand out in the turbo variant's all-black interior. Red details do help the look in daylight, while blue ambient lighting enhances the ambience at night. Of the other things, the digital speedometer that changes theme with drive modes is neat, and the large paddle shifters feel great to hold.
Like the Creta, the Seltos also feels bigger than the others inside. The Seltos has the more interesting dashboard that positions the touchscreen high up, but the large binnacle that extends to the instrument console could impact visibility for shorter drivers. The driver's seat does offer plenty of adjustment, and that slightly firm cushioning is in keeping with the Kia's sporty vibe. Do note, our GTX Plus test car features a two-tone interior theme, but newer ones get an all-black theme. The Seltos does edge past the Creta with slightly better quality, including padded materials on the dash, and general attention to detail is better as well.
The Kicks cabin looks the most basic in this comparison, and there's a reason for that. Nissan doesn't sell the Kicks Turbo CVT in fully loaded XV premium option form, which, among other things, packs in leatherette on the seats and dashboard. The dash is neat, but elements like the basic looking instruments don't help the look of things inside. There are some ergonomic issues as well. The footwell is narrow, and the Kicks' front seats are set too high, which means taller drivers will be looking down at the road rather than straight at it. Spend time in one and you'll realize there's a shortage of storage for small items in the Kicks as well. All other models offer ample places to keep odds and ends. Now to talk features. Auto LED headlamps, push button start, auto climate control and cruise control are things you get on each of these models. All but the Creta also get rain sensing wipers. The Kick CVT that's only sold in mid-spec form just can't match the others on frills though. The Taigun and Kushaq do well with standard fit steering, tilt and telescopic adjust, and also feature unique touch operated controls for the climate system. Indents at the temperature and blower sliders mean you don't need to take your eyes off the road while making adjustments. There are feature differences among the two cousins. The Taigun gets digital dials while the Kushaq gets you cooled front seats, although the system is quite noisy. The Astor packs in a few more feel-good features like a powered driver's seat and an electronic parking brake. The AI assistant on the dash top that's on call to act on commands for the sunroof and the like, as well as give you trivia from Wikipedia or even tell jokes, is a cute if slightly gimmicky feature. For all its tech, the Astor does miss out on things like an auto-dimming mirror and wireless charging. And while the Astor does pack in a 360-degree camera, the resolution isn't great. If you look at the big picture, it's the usual suspects, Kia and Hyundai, that do the most to pamper those sat up front. For starters, both pack in powered driver's seats and front seat ventilation. It's the Seltos with the best cameras, and it's also unique for its handy head-up display. Where the Creta is superior is in its use of an electronic parking brake and the all-important panoramic sunroof, a feature that will make its way to the Seltos later this year.
In the area of infotainment systems, the Astor, Taigun, Kushaq, Creta and Seltos use touchscreens that measure just over 10 inches across, and all are nice enough to use. The Kicks has the smallest screen here that measures 8 inches. A useful inclusion in the Taigun and Kushaq is wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. In terms of audio quality, the Creta and Seltos' Bose system delivers the best sound. The Kushaq is the best of the rest in this department and goes one up on its cousin the Taigun with a subwoofer. All these models get some level of connected tech, so you can remotely keep an eye on your vehicle, with an automated SOS alert to the authorities in the event of an accident being an important safety feature.
And with that, time to switch focus to the rear seats. For reference, I'm 5 feet 11 inches tall and Gavin is 5'8". Into the Astor first. So inside the MG Astor, I think it's got a good amount of space here for someone of my size. The front seat is set to my driving position. I have a lot of knee room, and what I really like is that there's lots of space to stretch my feet under the front seat. Even headroom is a bit more than adequate.
That's true. Actually, from the outside, it doesn't look like a very huge car, but it's got quite a bit of space inside. And on the comfort front, it's pretty good in that it's a very softly cushioned seat. I don't think quite as soft as the seats in the front, but still pretty good. The only thing I don't like so much is that the under thigh support is a little low and you sit a bit knees up. But there's plenty to keep you comfy back here. AC vents, USB ports, and of course an MG trademark at this point, panoramic sunroof. The Volkswagen Taigun doesn't offer the same sense of space.
The Volkswagen Taigun has one of the longest wheelbases in the segment, and it does result in a lot of legroom. But I'd still call this a fairly compact space to be in. It's not really wide enough for three, and if you're taller, there is enough headroom, but this hump sort of reduces that feeling of space.
What I do really love about these seats though is the squab. It's so nice and long, it gives you great under thigh support, and though it might seem a little upright at first, once you snuggle in you realize that it's very comfortable and very supportive. This is a great seat. I do wish it was complete leatherette and not just part leatherette. That would have just added a slight premium touch, I think.
Yeah.
Unsurprisingly, you get a similar experience in the Kushaq.
Skoda Kushaq again doesn't offer anything different to the Volkswagen Taigun. Uses its wheelbase to great effect. I have a lot of knee room, lots of space to put my feet under the front seat, but again, it's that width that works against it, right?
That's right. Again, like you said, lots of thigh support because this too has that lovely long squab. What I like here that's slightly different though is that they have gone with complete leatherette upholstery, so it covers the entire seat, and that does feel good. The Creta and Seltos feel the largest up front and are the roomiest at the back too.
Now, after spending time in the other three, doesn't this feel like a larger car? It's so much more generous in legroom, even just the sheer cabin width, shoulder space, and of course the panoramic sunroof that makes all the difference to the feeling of space inside.
They've really doubled down on it, both with the sensation of space and the actual physical space. The seat also, it's so nice and comfy and plush. Space, like you said, is great, and there are also loads of creature comforts. These soft cushions for one, big favorite of mine. They've also got sun blinds that you can pull up. You can adjust the seat back recline, and of course AC vents, USB port and the like. The Seltos' rear seat is different in small but noticeable ways.
Now into the Seltos, well, the experience is largely the same as the Creta. I'm very comfortable on knee room. There's a lot of foot space for me, and generally there's more distance between you and me than in the other SUVs.
Yeah, I think that's about a fair assessment. However, I'd say comfort in the Creta is a little bit better. The seat squab here isn't quite as large, so you don't get as much thigh support, and overall the cushioning is not quite as soft as in the Creta. Now that's great in the front seat where it feels nice and sporty, but here in the back you want to be a little comfier, and the Creta does a little bit better on this. In terms of creature comforts, you get most of the same stuff. Rear sunshades, adjustable seat back angle, but one thing it is missing, and it's a big one, the panoramic sunroof. You don't get that here. The Nissan Kicks is the largest of the models here, but how does that translate to the rear seat experience?
So the Kicks has the largest wheelbase, but that doesn't necessarily translate into knee room, does it? I mean, I have a reasonable amount of space, but it's the least in this comparison. Cabin width is decent, but again, not the best in class.
Yeah, you're right. I'm surprised. It looks like a pretty big car on the outside, but there's not a lot of space considering the size. It also doesn't have a whole lot back here to wow you, I don't think. The fabric upholstery looks pretty basic, and there's not a whole lot of creature comforts. It all looks a bit stark, to be honest.
It's also a bit of a step up into the Kicks' cabin, and the rear door aperture isn't all that large. If you plan to travel with the full house often, you should know that the Taigun and Kushaq are the tightest in terms of shoulder space. The Kicks and Astor are marginally better, while the Creta and Seltos easily feel the most accommodating for 3 occupants at the back. That said, the Creta is the only one here without any form of a rear center headrest. The Astor, Taigun and Kushaq also do well with a 3-point seat belt for the middle passenger.
On airport runs and trips out of town, which one will take the most luggage?
The MG is on the back foot here with the least space on offer. The Creta and Seltos are roomiest on paper, but in practice you'll find two large suitcases take up most of the space inside.
It's the Taigun and Kushaq that have the smallest luggage areas with just 385 litres to offer. But because of the way they're shaped, you can actually manage to fit in two large suitcases, a cabin bag and a few soft bags.
The Nissan Kicks comes out on top in this area. Its 400-litre luggage compartment is widest, deepest and most accommodating. On the flip side, quite literally so, the Kicks is also the only one without split rear seats.
Before we head into the verdict, we have to talk about fuel economy. Now, MG and Nissan haven't revealed ARAI tested figures, but of the rest, it's the Taigun and Kushaq that boast of the best official numbers. The VW and Skoda cylinder-on-demand tech plays a role in enhancing efficiency, and along with the Kicks, they're the only ones to feature idle stop-start as well. It must be said though that turbo petrols are very sensitive to driving style, so if you drive with a heavy foot, those numbers could tumble very quickly. For these models, it's safe to assume city economy in the 8 to 12 kpl band, with the number improving to about 14 to 16 kpl on highways.
In terms of price, the Nissan Kicks CVT is easily the most affordable at 14.9 lakh rupees ex-showroom. But then again, you can only have this engine gearbox in mid-spec trim. The others are quite close on price, with the Skoda Kushaq style with the upgrade to 6 airbags being the priciest at 18.19 lakh rupees. Here's a quick look at how these rivals compare on standard warranty and maintenance packages. And one last thing, here's the prevailing waiting period on these models in their top spec trims as of mid-Feb 2022. So finally, which is the one model that'll fit your needs best?
The Nissan Kicks sure has the numbers of most interest on its side. It's got the lowest sticker price and most power. Even so, it's not the performance pick, but the one to buy if you're looking for a rugged crossover that can take a lot of abuse. Sadly, the Kicks doesn't offer much by way of feel-good features, even for the money, which marks it down for many buyers.
If driving engagement gets max weightage in your list of must-haves, your choice should be between the Volkswagen Taigun and Skoda Kushaq. They're easily the most entertaining to drive with their keen handling and exciting 1.5 TSI engines. They score well on other counts too, but those familiar with past products from either brand will find that distinctive Germanness has been watered down on the made-for-India duo. There's little between the two on features, but the Taigun's digital instrumentation and added flash get it our vote.
The MG Astor is the most premium inside and feels like a Euro spec car. Interestingly, it's the only one of these six that has an equivalent that's sold in Europe. It backs this up with a comfortable experience on the move, and those ADAS features are a USP in their own right. Keen pricing only helps the Astor's case. However, the Astor isn't too sporty, and that's something which might not sit well with someone paying a premium for this more powerful turbo version.
As a package, it's the Creta and Seltos that feel the most complete. By virtue of being the roomiest, they make for great family cars, and keen drivers will also find a good match in the turbocharged petrol variants that offer strong power and neat dynamics. If you really break it down, the subtle differences between the two do add up to give them slightly different personalities. The Seltos comes across as the sportier and more youthful pick. The Creta, it's relatively more comfort-oriented.
In the final analysis, it's the Creta's comfier ride, plusher rear seat and that panoramic sunroof that help it just about nose past the Seltos.
So, what's your pick? The tough one, the comfortable one, the exciting ones, or the well-rounded ones? But that softness comes at the cost of high-speed manners.
But it does have something that the others don't.
If the Astor is all about taking it easy, the Taigun is...
I'll also wear sunglasses.
That's on you, sir. Your wardrobe is you.
Yeah, in my bag. the middle pocket has a glasses.
Which bag? Red bag.
Red bag.
Yeah, I support. Go. Wait. एक मिनट, one more time.
नहीं वो नहीं
हाँ? नहीं है वो?
ये
क्या करो?
Okay, so you want to start?
Yeah. What is my line?
क्यों